There are over 105 million people over the age of 50 years old. Compare that to about 50 million Gen Xers and 82 million millennials. Face it, this society is getting older. Between now and 2050, the population of those over 65 is expected to more than double, while the population of those under 20 years of age is probably not going to see any growth. We're going to talk about this a little bit on today's show. By the way, welcome to the show. This is the Retirement Answer Man Show. My name is Roger Whitney, your host. And if you have not visited us before, this is the place to help you not just survive retirement. We really, truly want you to rock it. So with an aging society comes the issue or the potential issue of ageism in the workplace. And we have a question from a listener today that we're going to dive into. And then in our hot topic segment, we're going to talk about ageism. What is it? How might you deal with it? But we can't do any of that until we have that all-important disclaimer. Would you take advice from a complete stranger? Even if you like them? They don't know anything about you. Just like I don't know anything about you. So don't take advice from me. This is helpful hints in education. That's really important to remember when you're listening to people. Only take advice from people that do know you and have built up some rapport to be able to speak into your life. So before you make any decisions based on what I say, go talk to your financial advisor, your legal advisor, your tax advisor, because that's just common sense. Now let's go talk about ageism. So in this hot topic segment, I want to talk about ageism as it's thought about in society, because we have a question in our practical planning segment about, can you really get pre-retirement work or find a job if you lose your job later in life, meaning after 50? I mean, what about ageism? And it's a great point, and we'll address it more specifically in the practical planning segment, but I thought we would define what is ageism and what is an action plan to help guard yourself against it. So ageism is defined as prejudice or discrimination based on age, whether you're young or old. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that complaints filed to the EEOC are on the rise. Last numbers I saw were about 15,000 complaints there were in 1997, up well above 20,000 today. And I'm just going to read you some stats about ageism. They say 64% is the percentage of workers who say that they have either seen or have experienced some form of age discrimination in the workplace. 58% of American workers believe that age discrimination typically begins when workers reach their 50s. So I'm 51. Interesting thought there as I was researching this topic and thinking about it. It's like, well, have I experienced ageism being an independent business owner? I don't know if this qualifies, but I do get the question when I have fit meetings with potential clients about my age. How old are you? How long do you plan on working? I guess that would be defined as a ageism issue, right? They're discriminating me or potentially discriminating me because I'm older. But they ask the question, rightfully so, because if they're going to hire me as their advisor, they want to know I'm going to be around, right? They want to know that who they're hiring, who they're going to invest time with and take counsel from is going to be there to walk the journey with them. So I have no problem answering that question, but it does bring up the point. Is that different than an employer evaluating an employee based on, do I want to invest in this person from a personal development standpoint or a promotional standpoint if they think that there's not enough runway to get the return and that everything will be disrupted? I don't know the answer to any of this, but it just came into my head as I thought about this. Back to more statistics. On average, it takes someone age 55 over 3 months longer to find a job than a younger person. 1 in 3 workers has either experienced discrimination or has seen it firsthand since 2008. I don't know how they come up with these statistics, by the way. How do you know? The problem with statistics is they're very easy to massage. I mean, when I was in debate in high school, I used to own a book called How to Lie with Statistics. It's actually really easy based on end date, sample size, what you're defining your terms as. So I always get a little wary about very broad statistics like this. Then I'll just throw one last one out there. 64% of workers say they have seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace. So what do you guys think about this? I'm wary to make blanket statements that, no, it doesn't exist just because I've never experienced, other than the simple example I gave you, because I believe that there are always circumstances out there where people are experiencing things that may just be wrong and done in a bad way, not even done because they're trying to protect their interests, just discrimination. I have no doubt. It comes in all forms and all sizes. And as you get older, companies looking at you, they see someone that probably has a higher salary, probably costs more from a benefit standpoint, maybe less willing or able to learn new things and get with the program, has less energy, is willing to take their vacation days, all those types of things. I can see people making those calculations when they're trying to decide hiring and firing and promotional and raise decisions. I have no doubt. You know, it's easy to downplay the collective wisdom and experience and network that someone that's been in the workplace for a while can bring. And I think many times we, meaning us over 50, are not as proactive in demonstrating all the awesomeness that each of us has. We fail to package it and show that gung-ho attitude like a younger worker might do. I don't know, but I can see how this stuff gets calculated into this whole mix. Even though legally discriminating against someone based on their age is not legal. There have been some acts and it's, protected class. You can file complaints. I don't really want to get into, is it real? Is it not? How much does it happen? And all of those other things. What I do want to talk about is, how do you be proactive in mitigating this risk for yourself? Because at the end of the day, when we look outward of what's happening around us and what might be impacted us, it's easy to focus on what they're doing to us or what we perceive is about to be done to us and feel powerless and feel like we're being acted upon and it's just not right. We get righteous about it sometimes. And I'm not saying this is you. I'm just thinking out loud. So I always come back to, and I think about this when people talk about investing in the markets, right? In terms of the presidency, taxes, inflation, tariff, all this other stuff. We do need to acknowledge that those things are out there and they may have impacts on us, and a lot of it we can't control. But at the end of the day, you have to, I believe it's imperative, you focus back onto what can I do next to improve my situation. So when we think about getting older in the workforce, how do we fight the potential of ageism, this prejudice happening to us? I can think of 3 specific things. One is be proactive in your career. If you're over 50 and you've done what you've done for a very long period of time, it's easy to get underappreciated. It's actually just a natural human thing that the longer something is around us, even if it's awesome, we appreciate it less because we become accustomed to it. It's just a natural psychological thing that happens. I'm sure there's a fancy name for it. So it's up to us to be proactive in our career and help justify our existence, not just by doing a good job that you have to do, but by making sure that from an outward perspective, people see the value you bring. How do you do that? Well, if you're going to be proactive in your career, you need to make sure that you are fostering and improving your professional network. So if you're in a company, I don't care if it's a manufacturing company or a big corporation, you need to have a network of people, superiors and coworkers that say, man, that lady, she's, Jenny on the spot, or he's Johnny on the spot. They like you, they know you, they trust you, and you're constantly nurturing those relationships. Because at the end of the day, things come down to relationships. That can tilt the scale one way or the other. And that can help you get promotions. It can help you keep your job because they see you as indispensable, because they know, like, and trust you, and that's hard to replace, even with a youngster. Second, in being proactive in your career, is to continue career development, your skill set. To think of, again, it doesn't matter whether you're an attorney or whether you're a manufacturer. How can you get better at what you do, or how can you make yourself more valuable to the company that you're working for? One, from an outward perspective, they're going to see, wow, that Roger, he's 51 years old, but he's still sharpening the sword, sharpening the knife to get better and better and better. Is it sharpening something? He's still working to get better. He's not complacent. That goes a long way in fighting ageism. I think both of these two. And then obviously the third one is just performing and helping make sure people realize the performance that you do. Because if you perform amazingly well at your position, but nobody notices, well, it's sort of like a tree falling in the woods, isn't it? So I think that's one proactive thing we can do, not to eliminate ageism or the possibility of it, but it can go a long way to help protect you against it and mitigate the risk. 2, what is the second thing you can do? You can get good at having a plan B. Having a plan B means having something to turn to so you're not 100% dependent on the hand that feeds you or the employer that employs you. Because layoffs happen, and those calculations do happen. Many people, especially in corporate America, they get comfortable in a position, they feel like they're valued, and generally people are valued as an employee until they're not. Corporations are is the word expedient? They make corporate decisions where relationships and network and everything else sometimes doesn't matter. So the question is, if that happens to you on a corporate level, 4 rings above you in the org chart, are you going to be, I've never thought about what else could happen, or are you going to have at least some ideas in your head what a plan B might be? So what do? Well, you got to make yourself marketable. So always have your resume up to date. Have a very robust LinkedIn profile with connections that you nurture systematically. Even if you love your job, evaluate different positions, maybe even interview a little bit so you know the people at the other companies that you could have some relationship in the future. As an example, in my business, I do that with custodians. We use a custodian, we use LPL, but I have relationships at Charles Schwab, at Fidelity, at TD Ameritrade, and I nurture those relationships and I keep reevaluating them because I never know when I might need them, either as an addition to what I'm doing or to pivot because my current home is no longer viable. Third, under be successful at a plan B, is cultivate outside interests. Cultivate something that you might be able to do outside of your work, even if it couldn't replace all of the income, it could replace something. This goes to the fourth point under this, which is learn the gig and online economy. There's a whole economic revolution going on in this gig and online economy that many baby boomers and those over 50 are aware of, but don't really understand and never have had to participate in it. And the nice thing about that type of economy is it's very lean, it's very democratic, and it's really what you can bring to the marketplace. This is stuff that you should be learning anyway. That way, if that pencil on the org chart gets drawn and you happen to be below it, you're still going to stumble, but you may not fall face first. And then lastly, another way to fight ageism in general is just have your financial house in order, right? Have your fixed expenses under control. Have your debt under control. Have ample cash reserves. Right now, even if you can only do a little bit at a time in doing this financial part of it, be blessed you're employed, you have income, now's the time to do it, not scrambling once the notices come up. If you do these 3 things, you've already built some tripwires to really help protect yourself and give yourself a much better opportunity to pivot and thrive even if something happens from this. And that makes you immune, even if it's not ageism, but just normal corporate restructuring. And we tend to look at all the success stories. All of the things I just said, and I can say, oh, they're easy and everything else. It's hard work. I think, well, let me rephrase. It may not be hard work. It's just they're all things that have to be intentional. And sometimes the intentionality in this area can be hard when we're comfortable. All right, let's go on to the practical planning segment, answer some questions, and also dive into the question, I think it was from Chris, on ageism. Well, hello, October, and hello, Nicole Rockstar Mills. Hey, you're pretty awesome. You know that.
Oh, thanks. I think you're pretty awesome, too.
All right. I'm on this kick right now that I think I tease you too much because I like you so much, so I got to chill a little bit. So I'm going to be nicer to you.
Okay. That sounds good. I can be on board with that.
So we have questions. That's what we're going to be doing in the month of October. We're going to sprinkle in an interview here or there, but we're starting off with more listener questions. So what do we got today?
Our first question is from, I believe it's pronounced Demir, but if I pronounce that wrong, sorry. He wrote in, I retired last October, but I was asked by a former client to help them out as a consultant this year. So I've got some income coming in. I'm thinking of opening a retirement account. What are the differences between a SEP IRA and a solo 401k? Is one better than the other?
So first off, Demir, that's awesome that you sort of found pre-retirement and maybe not intentionally. And then now it's up to you to decide, making sure that you don't just dive back in and you keep whatever time freedom you were looking for. But it's a good question on if you are in a service-based business and have no employees, which generally are what these two vehicles are used for, that you can defer some money. So what are the differences between a SEP IRA and a solo 401k? So a SEP IRA, those have been around for years. And basically it stands for Simplified Employee Pension Plan. And it really, the big difference is going to be based on contributions. So with a SEP, you can contribute up to 25% of your total compensation up to a max of $55,000 or whichever one is less. So if you made $100,000, say in 2018, you can contribute up to $25,000 into a SEP IRA. And a SEP IRA would be managed just like an IRA. You can open one up anywhere and you would end up picking the investments and treating it just like an IRA from an investment standpoint. Now, a solo 401k is a little bit different in that it is a 401k that is allowed if it's yourself and I believe your spouse. So you can't have any employees with a solo 401k. And for answering this question, I'm just going to assume there aren't any employees involved. And it acts much like a regular 401k in that you contribute up to the maximum as an employee contribution. So you can put in up to the maximum of your employee contribution, and that's going to max what any 401k could put in. But you can also make what's called a profit sharing contribution, which if you're over the age of 50, you could put up to $60,000 in as a combination of employee contribution. There's a little bit of an employer match, which in your case is just you, and then a profit sharing contribution. So if we think of $100,000 in income, Demir, in a SEP IRA, you could put up to $25,000 in based on the limits. In a solo 401k, you could put up to $60,000, assuming you're over 50. So it allows you to defer a lot more. So those are the main differences from a contribution standpoint. And with a solo 401k, you're likely to have some fees by whoever administers the plan. A lot of big firms have templated things where usually it's, say, $300 or $400 or $400 or $500 to do the templated solo 401k because there is a little bit of reporting involved. So for you, I guess you have to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish. If you really want to shelter as much as you can, then maybe the solo 401k would be worth a little bit extra cost. If you're just wanting to defer some of it, then a SEP might be easier. I'm actually making this decision right now with a number of people for this year is, do we set up a SEP IRA or a solo 401k? Another thing to consider, now that I thought of it, Nicole, is one nice thing about the SEP IRA is if you're behind the eight ball, and you hadn't really done any pre-planning and you're sitting there, say, in November, December, oh, it'd be nice to defer some money in a retirement plan. Well, you're probably not going to be able to get a solo 401k set up very quickly. But a SEP IRA is really easy to set up quickly, and your due date on making the contribution for your SEP IRA isn't until the last tax deadline. So if you file extensions, you could actually in early October make a SEP IRA contribution for the prior year. So it gives you some time to have the money. It gives you some time to manage the cash flow if you find yourself behind the 8 ball. So that's something that you can do, fairly quickly, unlike a solo 401k. So hopefully that helps you, Demir.
Our next question is from Dan. And he writes in that he has a client who is educated and has some good experience and is having a hard time finding meaningful work. His question is, are second acts or encore employment just an opportunity for folks to write books? Is ageism, unconscious or overt, an insurmountable obstacle in finding meaningful work after age 50?
Sometimes it feels that way when you look at individual circumstances. I think there's always that idea of, all the books come out and, on lots of different things, lots of self-help books, and make things sound really easy, right? Just follow these 5 steps. Here are some great examples of how it worked out wonderfully. Well, yeah, it's nice to highlight those. It's nice to be optimistic, but it doesn't always tell all of the story, right? I think of weight loss, and I don't know if this is a good analogy or not. If you watch a lot of, read weight loss books or videos, it all sounds easy, but a lot of times it's not. One, because we have physical limitations that are difficult to overcome or manage. 2, we have our own, needs, wants, and desires that are hard to master, and self-discipline and lots of other things. So I get your point there. I try to be as realistic when I talk about, so hopefully I'm not one of, oh, sure, it's easy, just do this and that. It takes a lot of hard work. I recall a story from a friend who found himself in his mid-50s, basically bankrupt, although he chose not to file bankruptcy, without work and having to figure out how does he go literally provide for his family. And he was looking at, normal employment. And it was very clear that if he went and got a normal job in his 50s, he's not going to make enough money to provide for his family and pay down some of the debt that he had to take out. So almost a normal job wasn't an option for him. And so he applied for a 100% commission job, which can be scary, right? Because you got no guarantees of any income. And he walks in, and those jobs generally, there's always advertisements for those because there's no risk to the employer. And he walks in and he was shocked because he said there's like 40 other people there, all dressed in nice suits and nice dark suits, looking sharp and everything else. And here he is in his mid-50s in a pink sport coat. And he's like, holy crap, there's no way I'm going to get this. And so he mustered up and he went in and he says, well, obviously I'm the guy for the job because I'm the one that will stand out and that's what you need and then he basically sold himself into a job. Not all of us can do that, but it just makes me think of his intentionality and his creativity and how he did it. So go ahead.
I'm noticing, Roger, is that the emphasis in this question is on finding meaningful work. And one thing I would encourage you to think about is, are you being too narrow in your definition of meaningful also? Because I think sometimes we confuse meaningful and glamorous, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Seth Godin, in his book called Linchpin, which is an important book in my life, talks about the idea of being an artist in whatever you do. And, I think in the book he uses an example of even, if you're cleaning up, the general store, you can be the most amazing person doing something that doesn't seem like it's very glamorous or maybe even meaningful work. He gives the example of an actual person. Actually, I think it was a janitor in a school, how he brought meaning to it. But I definitely get your point, Dan, that books can be much more Pollyannish than life really is. So, Dan, I would refer to the action steps that we talked about in the Hot Topic segment, and I get your point. And I think ultimately we just got to figure out what can we do today to make tomorrow better, regardless of what we're facing.
Our next question is from Hugh, And he wants to know where he can find a non-slanted educational website about long-term care insurance. He says he knows the basics, but he wants an impartial review without the pressure to purchase.
And actually, it's asset-based long-term care insurance, I think, Nicole, right?
Yes.
It's a good question, Hugh. And we'll have a link to a website that gives some good, fairly non-biased information in Six Shot Saturday. But I don't know what non-biased is, right? Because this is from the Long-Term Care Insurance Association. So everybody has a stake in the game. So, and I sent that to you individually, but for everybody that's listening, I'll make sure that we put that in Six Shot Saturday. So first off, what are we talking about when we're talking about asset-based long-term care insurance? So long-term care insurance, as we normally think about it, is you sign up for long-term care benefit and there's an agreement there. That's all you're buying. Well, asset-based long-term care insurance typically comes in one or two forms. It's going to be in a life insurance form. So you buy permanent life insurance and you attach a rider to it that has some long-term care benefit built within the life insurance policy. So you're going to pay extra for it. It's going to be permanent insurance, and it's going to allow you to either tap your cash value or even a portion of your death benefit, I believe, in the event that you have a long-term care event. And some of the advantages of it are that usually the underwriting is, meaning, them looking at you and pricing you as a long-term care risk, is either not done or done in a very light way. And the other advantage is that you have a built-in policy where you're really buying life insurance with the rider, and they're going to use your own money based on the death benefit to give you the benefit that you're talking about. But that can be a way of getting around all the issues that we've talked about with normal long-term care insurance. Another form of asset-based long-term care insurance is similar in an annuity form where the ones that I have seen where, and I'm making these numbers up, but I'll illustrate, is if you put in $100,000, they'll say, well, if you have a long-term care event, we'll give you $200,000 in benefit in the event there's a long-term care benefit, but you give up some of the money that you put in. We're going to be doing more in-depth review of these, probably in the Rock Retirement Club. I have not used these, but in terms of a source to get an unbiased point of view, it's a little difficult to do that because everybody has a stake in the game. And these are extremely new products. Generally, I have a bias here. I will say that, in that I like to eat food, not food product. I like to use investments and normal things and not manufactured products. And the insurance industry is the master of manufactured
processed food of finance.
They are the Twinkie factory of investment products. And I have a bias from that point of view, when in fact there are some very good manufactured products. And so I'm working on myself there, and I'm working on evaluating these. But I'll put that link in there to start giving you some explanation of the basics so you can better educate yourself. Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to live a happier life. And Nicole, you're one of the happiest people I know.
Thank you.
I was at a conference, FinCon, recently, and someone mentioned, Roger, you have more letters behind your name than in your name.
Did that make you happy?
I don't know if that made me happy or not. I hadn't really thought of it before. I guess it's been mentioned, with all my certifications. And it made me a little self-conscious at first because I recently started, I'm about a third of the way into it, in doing advanced study on retirement. There's a retirement management analyst certification through what used to be IMCA, which is one of the premier organizations that does education for financial advisors. Because I'm very picky on the letters I'm willing to have behind my name. And this is pretty deep stuff, and I'm excited to share it on the show and in the RRC. Some of the stuff is stuff I've already known, but there's a lot of information that I hadn't thought of in the approaches that I'm learning. And it's sort of exciting. And it made me think about, I certainly don't need it from a business perspective. You always can use it from a practice management perspective. But I think we got to never stop learning And that is really easy to do as we get older. And I think being a lifelong learner is one way to really be a happier person.
I think that's awesome.
That is the happy thought for the day.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a 7-day baby step to take a step to create a great life.
So many steps.
So many steps just to get to the step. Hey, ageism, I have no doubt, is real, and we're all getting older, so it's not like we can avoid it. So it comes down to what can you do in the next 7 days to be proactive, to make yourself the exception and not the rule. We talked about some of those ways in the Hot Topic segment. And as much as all these things are out there in life, we always have to come down. What is the thing that I can do next to improve my situation or mitigate the risk of this happening to me? I don't know what that step is for you, but I think in the next 7 days, if you noodle on it, you'll figure it out. All right, Nicole, we are into October.
Yay.
Let the chillness begin. I know you and your family are on a search for Halloween costumes. I think
the boys want to be Vikings this year.
the boys will be Vikings. I imagine every year you're probably a witch. So we should probably, switch that up.
Last year I was a witch. I was Hermione from Harry Potter.
That was like a cool witch.
I will not even be insulted.
That was a cool witch. Oh, wait, I said I was going to be nice to you earlier this show. I need to. Okay, I apologize.
We're going to miss.
I will probably continue to be the whoopee cushion. I'm a whoopee cushion every year. And I have a fart machine with a remote control button. And when the kids put their hand in to get the candy, I hit the button.
So you sent one of those to my husband, and I actually found it in the cabinet the other day. I was like, what is this? Why is this here?
All right, I'll have to send him battery. So everybody, the show is over. We appreciate you. Don't let ageism or getting older zap your joy of October when it's going to get cooler. And
candy.
And candy. And fun. And costumes. Yeah. Have a great day, guys.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.